Hey guys, good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, well, before we kick off with introductions, I just want to give a big thank you to everyone for joining us today, wherever you sit in the US, for the launch of our 2023 salary guide, which is so exciting. So for those of you that don't know, for over a decade, Harnham has been publishing an annual salary guide that provides an in-depth view of the data landscape in select regions across the world, and then also a secondary one that is focused primarily on the US. You'll find information on average salaries for different data roles, as well as hiring, workplace trends, and tech trends, along with expert commentary on how we can drive progress in data, AI, and machine learning. So before we get into introductions and more about the guide, I want to give you the fine print that I promised our marketing team I would run through. So through a combination of survey responses and internal data, we've analyzed more than 165,000 data points in this year's research. It's important to note that the information presented in this report has been independently collected and analyzed. And just like any research endeavor, this research does have limitations. However, it's worth noting that Harnham's been conducting this survey for over a decade. With over 10 years under our belt of experience, our guides have been the go-to source for data salaries worldwide. So if you want to download the full 2023 guide, we've included the link below. And this year, for the first time, we're really proud to have created an interactive website where you can compare your salary to the industry standard. In today's session, we'll be covering some key findings and overarching trends, and we'll also be answering questions that you might have about the current state of the US data market. So please feel free to drop any questions in the comments section, and we'll address them throughout the talk. Before we get started, again, we'll do some quick team introductions. I'm McElla. I'll be your moderator today. I manage our San Francisco office and celebrated my 5-year anniversary with Harnham yesterday. So I'm very pleased to have been a part of this growing business and this growing survey that we've been doing every year. I've been in technical recruiting from the agency side for close to 15 years now. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. Sam, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, McElla. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sam. I'm a senior VP and partner here. I'm based in New York City. My teams here cover the Northeast, parts of the Midwest, and a few of the southern states as well. I've also been working at Harnham for quite some time. I've been here for just over 10 years. So I've done 6 years in London with Harnham and the previous 4 years in New York.
And Kyle, can you give us your intro?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Kyle. I head up our Southwest territory here. We cover quite a few states, which I'll get into here in a little bit. Been with Harnham for going on 2 years now. We opened our office, which I'm sitting in right now, out of the Phoenix market that kind of manages this account. And I'm really excited to be a part of this. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Now let's get into it. So we're going to kick things off with our first overarching trend this year, which is no surprise. It's the state of the job security in the U.S. data market. So the U.S. data industry has been shaken by this year's economic uncertainty, with only 40% of data professionals feeling as or more secure in their roles compared to last year. Last year, we had candidates feeling 92% secure in their roles. And again, that's now dropped down to 40%. These ongoing economic storms have impacted people's willingness to switch roles, with only 40% of respondents claiming that they'd be willing to leave their role if another opportunity came up. This is down from 70% in 2022. Despite all of this, data professionals who have switched roles this year managed to obtain an 8% increase on their average salary. But we're going to talk about what that metric, how that compares to years prior. So obviously, it's probably challenging to secure candidates if they're unwilling to make a move at this time. Kyle, can you share some insights into what you're seeing in the Southwest?
Yeah, certainly. For some context and to elaborate a little bit more on the Southwest, my team and I cover Arizona, Texas, Utah, and Colorado, just to name a few. And if anybody's interested in a full breakdown of not only what our Southwest territory is, but what the breakdown is in across the country, page 7 on the salary guide will give you a full breakdown of that, and which teams are covering what. In our territory, what we saw is in the Southwest region, roles this year saw a 7% increase in pay, which is slightly lower on average than the national. Considering that respondents saw 22% pay increase this year, clearly pay in the Southwest and these states aren't meeting employee expectations. I think there's a couple factors playing into that. Number one, on average in the states that we cover, cost of living is a bit lower than the East and West coasts. That impacts average salary and pay increases. But moreover, we saw coming into this year and specifically through 2020, 2021, and 2022, a much higher increase in pay. And I think that was a product of the shift to needing to be fully remote. And we're going to get into this topic a little bit more down the road, but we're seeing a bit of a market correction in the Southwest now that companies are kind of going into a hybrid environment. The second factor, I think, is the ongoing economic storms that we're all seeing impacted some budgets and hiring for some companies. It's not only impacted those pay increases and candidates willing to shift jobs, but it's also looking at that candidate, that candidate confidence in staying or switching. Only 56% of candidates are willing to leave a role for the right opportunity this year, which is down 15% percentage points than last year. Again, I believe the main factor of this is kind of the economic landscape right now and some of the shifts that we're seeing in the market. Sam, what about you? What are you seeing in New York?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So yeah, I've had a look at the data from the guide that our team have analysed, and actually the respondents in the Northeast saw a 9% pay increase on average, which is higher than some parts of America, and certainly higher than the national average. So I think it's fair to say the East Coast has been potentially a little bit more resilient than other parts of the US. I can make some assumptions here, but it's obviously less tech focused than California, for example. And I think we've certainly seen that in our numbers generally at Harnham this year with the way the year's gone so far. And similar to what Kyle said, despite this kind of pay increase, it's not keeping up with our candidate expectations. As we all know, data professionals do command big pay rises to make moves. It's one of the number one factors. And yeah, people are looking at a 23% pay increase expectation. That's what they were asking for. But the reality of this year, certainly I think in Q1 and Q2, we were seeing this squeeze down quite a lot, and actually a lot of candidates moving for like packages. So from me personally, I think I've seen the market return to reality somewhat in terms of pay rises which are being achieved and what people were actually expecting. Anyone that's been involved in the recruitment market in the last few years, it's been pretty wild actually. 2021, 2022, I think companies were pretty desperate to hire, and I think a lot of candidates knew this, and it was really pushing up pay rises, and particularly if you look at candidates within the publicly listed companies who are getting RSU grants, any candidates that have been in those companies for 2, 3, 4 years, we're looking at their stock packages, which have gone from X number to something very high, and those kind of candidates were getting huge offers in the market. So yeah, during the correction, I think a lot of people were hit, and this year recently, the market has been flooded with some really, really good talent. I think it's taking a bit of time for things to normalize somewhat. And I think particularly towards the end of this year, we're going to see a number of factors at play. I think we will see more vacancies coming onto the market due to a stabilizing US economy. I think everyone's got their fingers crossed that things are going to continue to stabilize, and the numbers are going to look a little bit better. And I think we'll probably see less available candidates taking up these new jobs. Again, there were lots of layoffs. A lot of these candidates got, fairly respectable severance packages. And it's taken a little while for people to pick up these jobs. So yeah, I think things will stabilize somewhat. I think we'll probably see a bit more macroeconomic turbulence, but I would say generally our market is somewhat shielded by this in normal times. And potentially towards the end of the year, we might see people achieving those 20% plus pay rises again, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time. How about you, McElla, on the West Coast?
Yeah, I think similar trend to what you're seeing in New York. I think California candidates are reporting a 9% pay increase when changing jobs. And that is about half of what their expectations were when they were seeking a job. And I think a lot of that plays into that boom from the post-pandemic years and their colleagues and friends that might have made a change and potentially did secure a huge increase based on the climate of the job market then. But the reality is businesses are just having to tighten up their belts a little bit, and the candidate market is flooded. And so if you are a candidate that wants to make a move right now based on different priorities, whether that be motivation to do the work, the culture, your family situation, you probably are going to have to align your expectations to the reality of the marketplace and make some adjustments and be willing to make some sacrifices on what your expectations are in order to secure that next step for your future role, because companies are just not able to put out some of those ridiculous offers that we saw even just like a year and a half ago. So I think that's where we are. We have a question from Indigo. Does company culture matter more than compensation, or is compensation the main reason a candidate will leave their role? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can jump in there. I think we're going to come on to these topics of what's driving movement and what's driving talent. But if we were to look at the data, which I'm just looking at now, the top reasons for leaving a role were the salary and the compensation not being competitive. So that is the number one reason that candidates are leaving a role. And if we go down the list, it's lack of progression, poor management, and then number 4 is poor company culture. So I think to answer the question from a data perspective, company culture obviously matters, but the number one reason people are moving is compensation.
Yeah. And speaking about company culture, I think that's been a challenge for businesses to think about driving. So, which leads into our next topic, which is returning to the office, or at least partly. So on a national level, remote and hybrid work remain a consistent theme this year, but flexibility has become a part of the new normal. And most employers have been pretty happy to accommodate this, which is, I think, really incredible. Many organizations are now establishing formalized agreements with their employees to ensure that people are committed to a specific number of days in the office. So some data from our guide, 17% of data professionals have an established flexible working arrangement outlined directly in their contracts. That's up from 10% who did last year. So this is definitely becoming a part of the fabric of work culture. And I think we'll see that figure grow in the coming years. Something else we're seeing from a flexible working perspective, half of respondents said that they would prefer to work fully remotely, yet less than 1% of respondents said that they've left a role because of lack of remote work. This is really interesting to me. I think, especially on the West Coast, we were the most delayed, I think, out of all of our regions in returning to work. And a lot of businesses are still trying to figure out what that return to work plan looks like. However, we're seeing a huge number of clients these days that are back in the office, some up to 4, some up to 5 days a week, which I think is a pretty big shift, but they're securing talent who are willing to do that. However, I think the most common trend we're seeing is that hybrid working model with maybe some very small startups offering fully remote based on how they're set up to work. Sam, what are you seeing on the East Coast?
Yeah, I agree with your comments there, McElla. I think 5 days a week in the office seems to be a thing of the past here. I would say it's pretty hard to find someone who is in the office every single day unless you've got a particular industry or job requirement for it. I would say most of the clients and candidates we speak to do see the benefits of both hybrid and remote. And look, I think the reality is it depends on the job. I think it depends on your level. You know, are you an individual contributor? Are you a manager? I'll give you a few examples. Honestly, most of our contract positions that come in are fully remote. But then if I look at most of our senior management VP level roles, they do require at least some in-office work. And I think this is becoming the new norm and something that's being accepted. You know, I will always advise my clients, if possible, be open to fully remote workers. I'll be honest, mainly because it's easy for us to fill the job. And the reason for that is because there's more talent on the market, right? You've got more to go at. I think, you know, actually speaking to candidates and clients, people do want to be in the office, at least on a hybrid basis. And there's a few reasons for that. You know, you want to, as part of your job, you need to talk to stakeholders and influence people in order to do your job effectively. And then, of course, there's the things around culture and team building and stuff like that, which is really important. And then other things I've seen, I think McElla mentioned that, you know, there's startups which are fully remote. If we look at the other end of the spectrum, the larger firms with established office spaces, I think are pushing a little bit harder to get people back in the office on a you know, whether it's 2 days, 3 days, etc. I have seen in these larger companies, some of the more established workers who have been there for a while can apply to be remote. But actually new hires is probably a bit trickier to get a fully remote position in one of these larger companies that's having a push back to the office. So what I would say to people, if you do have a remote job currently, I would think carefully about a move. And I would say you might potentially need to be open to hybrid in order to consider, to secure the role that you get. Kyle, how about you on your side?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the same out here. And I think we're going to, like, to echo McElla, what you said, I think we're going to continue to see that percentage increase of fully hybrid and that being worked into the actual contract and job agreements. Same out here in the Southwest, contract roles, a lot of them are still fully remote. It's kind of project basis, but the full-time kind of in office, we've seen that big shift. To echo and expand a little bit, Sam, of what you were saying, if you're in a fully remote role right now, that understanding of that flexibility and what it really means to you and being upfront about it in a process, I think is key. We see a lot of candidates as we're, you know, shifting into this kind of environment, working remote versus hybrid market correction here. We'll see a lot of candidates that will get all the way through a process and kind of bring it up at the last minute, and it could be a bit of a sticking point. That last point, McElla, that you went over, and I'll highlight it again, is only 1% of respondents said that they have left a role because of lack of fully remote. If you're in that 1%, I think being upfront helps your job search, and you know, if you're working with an agency or through us, helps us just identify those needs and not waste any time. To me, in our region down here, what we saw end of 2019 and into 2021 with COVID, what we all said was the new normal. Everything went remote because it was required. I kind of look at right now, we're in this correction where it's like the new normal almost. And I think we're going to land somewhere in the middle, to be honest with you. The hybrid working environment is going to increase a little bit, but I don't think we'll ever get back to 5 days in the office. So just being really clear on expectations and what you need, and identifying the roles that can fit that will help you in the long run.
Yeah, completely agree. We've got some questions from the audience. So just a question from Rodney. Are you seeing hiring trends for hiring chief ML AI management positions? Anybody want to do that?
Yeah, I can jump in. We definitely are. In fact, I think we're going to cover AI ML specifically later on, but I think it's kind of the new wave right now. It's the hot topic out in the industry. So yes, a lot of companies are riding the AI ML wave and expanding teams and developing different offerings. And with that, we are definitely seeing more and more teams built out. When you're building a new team, you need leadership management positions to kind of develop your contributors.
And from Coron, who are seeking jobs right now? Is it the middle management positions mostly, or more entry level senior positions for ICs?
Yeah, I can
Sam,
jump in there.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
sure. If I'm right in, I'm just reading the question again. Who are seeking jobs right now? I mean, it's across the market, right? There's lots of demand for individual contributors who are
Yeah.
very kind of tech savvy, but we see a lot of demand for really good people managers. And actually, if we kind of look at the skills gap in our market generally, it does tend to be excellent people managers who are good stakeholder managers with great communication skills who can influence and develop their staff as well. So there's demand across the board, to be honest with you. So it kind of depends on the company and the situation, but yeah, there's certainly opportunities out there.
Yeah, and we'll just do a few more, but just a reminder to our audience, who, if you're just joining us right now, we're covering some key findings and overarching trends for our 2023 salary guide that we're launching today. So you're able to download the report on our website or find out more detailed information about your direct salary on our site as well. So thanks for tuning in. We've got a lot more trends to cover. To wrap up our last section that we just covered on remote and hybrid working, we have a question from Randy that I think we all probably would agree on the same answer, but do you think that hybrid and remote work models are here to stay for the long run?
I think the short answer is yes. What we kind of talked through a little bit, I think through COVID, everything went fully remote. Now we're kind of correcting back. We'll land somewhere in the middle. A longer answer, I think it will also depend on industry too. We saw even during COVID, the requirement of being in office or hybrid when everybody was fully remote for industries like robotics, manufacturing, when they're actually making hardware, because what they're working on, they have to, implement directly into a piece of hardware. So I think there will be some variance depending on industry, but if we look at the overarching market itself in data and analytics, I think remote and hybrid will probably land somewhere in between where we were pre-2020 and where we were in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I would also predict that as there is more of a talent squeeze, maybe towards the end of next year, end of this year and next year, there will be a number of candidates who will push really hard for fully remote. And I'm sure, if they're, good enough candidates, they will probably get that as well. So I think the flexibility is certainly here to stay.
Yeah. I mean, as a working parent, I don't know how families ever did 5 days of work in an office a week. So I think that the flexibility that it affords families, for that matter, I think that we would probably have a riot on our hands if most businesses returned to 5 days a week. So I think that for most roles, obviously there will be situations like you mentioned, Kyle, where people have to work on products and you need your hands on sensors to be doing things. But I think it'll definitely be here to stay. Yeah. Okay. Before we move on to our next topic, a contentious one that I think we've come up against in our business a lot, and questions I always get. We have a question from Jenny. With the rise in AI and ML, I believe that I'm seeing fewer core analytics roles. Do you see this in your data?
Kyle, want to go first?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I would say right now, I guess it depends on what you mean by fewer. I don't see a drastic impact on core analytics roles as we sit right now. I will say that this AI kind of revolution is still fairly new, though. That's the caveat that I would put on it. I think there is still going to be a need wherever this AI push goes for the core analytics people and individuals. And mainly what we see in our core analytics teams is the ability to engage with stakeholders and answer complex business problems. And I truly don't think that an AI could do that, because there's that just human element to it, to be honest with you, and explaining data in a way that some of those stakeholders that aren't in the data industry can understand. So I think it's kind of a TBD almost, which is probably not the best answer right now, but I think I feel confident that it won't replace anything.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, AI has been around for a while. It's just getting a lot of attention this year. And if we look at over the past number of years, where has the most demand been? It's been in these core analytics roles, and companies realize that actually generating insights, reporting back, it's highly commercial. It's going to have a business impact. And a lot of our clients are building these new teams which are a bit more kind of experimentation focused, but they still need the core analytics roles to report back on insights. So yeah, agreed.
Yeah, Jenny, to give you some peace of mind, I think analyst roles will only fall by the wayside when product owners and stakeholders can effectively communicate their needs and what they're trying to achieve. So I don't see that need disappearing anytime soon. I think the reality of what you're seeing is probably more linked to the economic climate than AI or ML having an impact on your roles. Okay, so I guess just on that, we actually have one more that really ties in nicely to that. And I know none of us are economists, but are there any, this is a question from Makaran, any updates on the recent recession status and its impact? Anybody want to try to give an answer to that one?
Yeah, I'll attempt. I think, we've got a pretty good insight into job numbers coming through, what our clients are thinking, what they're doing. And yeah, I think across the whole recruitment industry, no matter what market you're in, I think Q1 and into Q2 was pretty tough for everyone in terms of actual job numbers. There's been a huge amount of caution in the market. I think what we've been seeing recently in the last few months, job numbers are certainly picking up somewhat. And even when it's companies do want to hire, they're taking on contractors or contractor hire just to be a little bit cautious with budgets. But if you look at the economy as a whole, share prices and stock prices are certainly recovering, and we're seeing that kind of come through to the market a little bit. There's still probably a lack of funding in some places, and people are looking at cash burn and things like that, and wanting companies to actually be profitable. But in terms of our recent job numbers, I think we're feeling a lot more positive right now than we were at the start of the year. And I think I mentioned previously, I think towards Q4 and beyond, we'll see a bit more stability in the market and a bit more of leveling out. That would be my prediction as someone who is definitely not an economist.
All right, awesome. We're getting a lot of questions from the audience on skills, which just for the audience sake, just so you know, we do have a section on that we're going to be coming up to shortly. So stay tuned. Before we get there, we're going to discuss our third topic, which is what's driving movement and attracting talent in the marketplace. So consistent with last year, the top, and Sam mentioned these, highlighted these a bit earlier, but the top reasons for leaving a role are 1, salary or rate not being competitive enough, 2, lack of progression or growth within the role, 3, poor management, and 4, company culture. Kyle, what are your thoughts on these topics?
Yeah, it wasn't surprising to see that. I think starting from the bottom of the list and moving up, I think year over year, we'll always see company culture and management as a reason, regardless of what's going on in the market and the economy and everything else. That is a main driver and always kind of top 4. The 2 that kind of stand out, I think always, and we've talked about it at length here, is a salary and rate. What we've seen is an uptick, though, this last year in the lack of progression. A lot of candidates after kind of the shift during COVID in the last couple of years of companies paying a ton of money and everybody going remotely, that correction has kind of taken place over the last year or so. Now a lot of candidates are really interested in progression and development. They want to see a path to whatever their goals may be, principal or management, leading a team and things like that. Not to say that salary isn't a factor, because obviously it is number one, but I think those two coincide and are considered more often now as a driving factor together than just a number. And I think that's a big indicator of what's going on in the market for us.
Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think 2023 just generally has been quite interesting. I think the layoffs, particularly at the start of the year, have caused a lot of candidates to really think about who they want to work for and why. And I think the reasons in the list certainly make sense. I think to give you a few examples, if we were to go back a year, 2 years, trying to move someone from one of the big tech firms into, for example, an insurance firm would be really, really difficult, just given RSU packages and just the general feeling around tech being just on a constant upwards. So that was never really a thing, but we've seen a lot of people changing industries. And the main reason for that is stability. And also people want to be paid, cash as opposed to equity and stock and things like that when the market is down. Also, we've been talking to a lot of candidates who are laid off, who are on visas and finding themselves in really difficult situations. And there was certainly at one point a bit of desperation in the market, of people trying to find jobs to stay in the country, right? So there's been a lot of challenges this year. I think on company culture, it's going to be interesting to see in future guides what the data says as people are pushed back into the office. I think culture will become higher on the agenda, and that links into remote work, hybrid work, things like that. So yeah, we're still sort of feeling the yo-yos of the post-COVID world, but I think things will stabilize, and that's I guess what I'm seeing. I don't know about you, McElla.
Yeah, I agree. I think the company culture thing is such a firestorm right now, because I think executives and investment firms are struggling to think about how they build that company culture and really get people engaged within a business and their mission if they are remote, right? So I think if company culture is something that is really important to you and a driver, I think you have to be willing to be flexible and go into an office, because you really can't build that company culture if you're not engaging with people on a regular basis, getting to know them outside of a 30-minute meeting on Zoom, hanging out around the water cooler or the lunch table or whatever that looks like, happy hours. You can't build that. So I just always caution candidates to really think about, you're saying one thing, but maybe potentially asking for another. And I think we all have to work together to build a company culture. So we have a question from Brian tying into this. Is equity really not a prime factor? So to give you guys some data points, the top 5 reasons, the top 5 benefits for candidates this year was number 1, health insurance, number 2, work from home, number 3, bonus, number 4, 401k match, and number 5, equity. So Brian, it's the 5th most important driver based on our data points. I don't know, Sam, Kyle, anything you want to share from that side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on the individual and the opportunity, really. It always is in the conversation, especially if a company or a position is offering some sort of equity package. But I think, as we've mentioned a million times, the difference in this year's market and the layoffs, I think cash in hand and on the paychecks was more top of mind a lot of times, and understanding of health insurance and the bonuses and all of that. I think it is still a driving factor, but I think just slipped down a little bit because of the climate in the market this last year.
Yeah, I agree. It depends on the individual as well. We've worked with plenty of startups this year who, to certain candidates who want more cash, they will offer more cash, but they will decrease the equity and vice versa. So it depends on the individual and their risk appetite and also your personal circumstance. If you've got a family that depend on you, you're probably going to want to have a bit of a higher base just to make sure you've got that job security and cash inbound. But we've seen quite a lot of candidates be happy to take lower bases and get more equity and not roll the dice. But, there is a certain element of risk, particularly in these smaller startup companies when you're receiving equity. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of this ties into the reality of what people have lived through the past few years, right? I think after a pandemic and a global health crisis, healthcare feels probably a bit higher of a priority, not knowing what you might encounter, and that lent straight into the remote working that is on everybody's top of mind. Okay, heading into our fourth topic, the AI storm. All right, let's dig into it. So this particular topic has been making waves across the media day in, day out, especially with ChatGPT on everyone's radar. You may have already guessed it, but yeah, we're talking about AI. Nearly half of respondents that believe that AI and machine learning is going to have the biggest impact on the data industry this year. At Harnham, we're already seeing signs that some of our clients are beginning to utilize elements of AI, but actually most of our clients and the work that we've been doing has already been capturing this space for years to come with machine learning models and really building out those types of image processing and other forms of applications and models. So I think now it's just inclusive of more of this buzzword of AI. For example, computer vision, where companies are looking to generate new images across the medical field, security, and creativity, the emergence of generative AI has been huge. It's now pervasive in the industry, and all companies, I'm sure you guys are seeing this too, are trying to find a way to put AI spins onto their products. Sam, what are you seeing on the East Coast?
Yeah, there's a huge amount going on here. We actually just placed 2 generative AI computer vision engineers last week, for example. So it's continuing to grow. Our market loves a buzzword, don't we? So if I think back to listening to an old client years ago who was refusing to use the term data scientist, that's obviously a lot different, but I think this is going to be huge. Thing is, it's not new. Harnham, we've been working on these roles for many years now, but it's really, gathered pace in the market. And we're getting a lot of calls here on the East Coast from lots of interesting startups in this space who are looking for the absolute top talent within AI, and not just people who have, kind of into it because it's a buzzword, who have got deep experience. And these are pretty well-funded startups. So again, I think probably in the years to come, we're going to see a significant talent squeeze. I think the salaries are going to be really pushed up in this space. And it's not just startups. There's big companies as well. If you just look at the news of what people are launching, for example, I think it was TripAdvisor have just launched a beta version of their generative AI tool, which is an itinerary-based builder for your personal trips. And if you're going to Paris, it will build an itinerary for you based off billions of user reviews. So there's lots of interesting things happening there. I think the thing with AI, particularly when something's new, the regulation often comes after the innovation. So there's lots of talking in the industry about ethics of AI, and there's tons of examples in the music industry, content creation. There's lots of fake products. There's lots of things around social media, and actually the US government they're trying to regulate it, but I think it's all very new. I think if you look at what Biden's done, he's got voluntary AI safety commitments from I think it's 7 or 8 firms like OpenAI, Meta, Google, Microsoft, but nothing's really enforceable so far. So I think what we want to, what we're seeing from at least the big companies and the big firms is they're creating these environments to experiment. And when I say environments, they need to be controlled environments to make sure, the right work is being done. You can see this as an amazing industry, but it's almost going to create as many problems as it will solutions. Which again, when we're talking about just AI, there's all this worry about are people going to lose their jobs? I think from our perspective, at least, it's going to create a lot of opportunity and a lot of extra jobs.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. It's something we're certainly focusing on as a team, and we're watching closely, and we're just trying to keep up to date with everything that's coming through, which is, there's huge opportunity. It's very exciting.
Kyle, anything you'd want to add there?
No, I mean, I would echo a lot of those things. Like the biggest thing is that it's been around for so long here in Phoenix specifically. Even over the last few years, we are one of the biggest test markets on the planet for autonomous vehicles, and they've been using computer vision, ML, AI for years and years. Again, I think it's the hot topic right now. One interesting thing, Sam, that I would echo and just highlight again is I think there is going to be a competition for top talent as these companies continue to develop and grow these teams out, which will be interesting to see over the next few years.
Yeah, I think it is just that buzzword that we tend to see. A few years ago, it was machine learning, right? And machine learning meant something different to every person who was asking about it. And I think that's just now shifted into that AI terminology, but it hasn't necessarily changed the nature of the work that we're recruiting for very much. Okay, so moving on to our fifth topic, the most popular tech. And I know we have a lot of questions from the audience based around this, so we're going to cover a lot of your questions shortly. So most popular technology used across the data space. This is what the report came back with. I was pretty shocked about. The top 5 technologies used by data professionals. Number 1, Python. 2, SQL. 3, Tableau. 4, Excel, which is a newcomer to this list. And 5, AWS. I guess what really threw me for a loop was that I think usually year over year, we see technology evolving so quickly, and this list is always changing. However, a lot of these technologies have been around for a while and have been consistent. So I don't know, it seems to have been maybe a little bit of a slowdown. Sam, Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. It's almost like a basic list. I think just to go into what we're seeing here, at least on the East Coast, there's so much tech and tools in our markets. It's hard to kind of summarize, but particularly within Python, libraries like TensorFlow, which is used in machine learning and computer vision, is really high on the list. I know Tableau's in the list. It's still very high. I'd say that's a competitive space. You've got Power BI. You've got Looker, which is up there, and we get lots of clients asking for those. AWS, we see that a lot. We are seeing a few companies move away from Azure and GCP as well. I would say from a hiring perspective, companies tend to be pretty, okay with any of the cloud experience, but particularly at the senior level roles who are going through cloud migration exercises, a lot of companies will ask for that deep AWS experience and people who have done it before at a more senior level. So that's been very interesting. Within machine learning, and when I say machine learning engineering, we're seeing a lot of the positions getting more siloed away from data science, actually. So the machine learning roles are more focused on scaling and development and deployment versus the actual modeling, which has been an interesting trend. And we're doing lots more within ML ops as well. So, there's lots of specialized tools out there, particularly for orchestration and model management. For example, Ray and Argo, tools like that. Previously, I think they were used within SageMaker in AWS, but now these tools are becoming a lot more specialized. So we're seeing that, and clients asking for that. And then if we look at the more kind of senior roles, we've had quite a few roles in which require a senior leader to understand, how to work with data engineers, how to work with data scientists, machine learning people, and trying to bring that all together, which has been a challenge actually for a lot of our clients who want to expand these teams. They need a leader within the team, and they need someone who's done it all, which has been actually very, very difficult to find in a lot of cases. So, yeah, there's huge amounts going on. I know I kind of rambled on there, but that's a few of the things that
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with everything. I think that last point is important. We've seen a big uptick on the cross collaboration, working with different skill sets, and the two teams like being the bridge between, that data engineering or back end and front end, all the way up to even the BI functions, depending on the company and the role, of course. We actually had a question on the chat that relates to this from Adnan. There are a lot of tools available to run data analytics. Some have expertise in one tool or suite, while others have different expertise in the tool or suite. Do you think that this diversity of tools is a challenge for job seekers in data and for companies as well? I'm guessing companies looking for talent. I think it kind of depends on the role and the team that is hiring. But a lot of times what we usually see, to use the example, Sam, that you brought up is number 3 on the list, Tableau. It's a BI tool. A lot of companies will say, hey, we use Tableau, but if somebody has experience and expertise in BI or Looker, the learning curve is very small. We'll take a look at them. We'll see. Very rarely on a lot of these tools and expertise it's a deal breaker if they don't have it. I think a diversity in skills is always great, but some of this stuff can translate really easily. In that same vein, there's a few things. If a job requires, coding in Python, but you don't have that, that might be a bit of a stickier situation. I think it depends on what your focus is and as a candidate or as a team hiring, and what they're doing on how stringent that diversity is or the requirements are, and how it will impact hiring or job seeking.
Yeah, I think if you're a leader that's building a roadmap for products and tools, and you're looking at obscure products. So, for example, AWS is so pervasive within the industry, and we haven't really seen, at least on the West Coast, GCP or Azure really catch on to compete with AWS. So, if you're a leader that's opting for one of those tools, and we've seen it before, and you're very particular that somebody has to have GCP experience, there just aren't a lot of significant, awesome talent out there with that experience. So you probably need to be flexible and be willing to look at a candidate with any cloud-based application experience who's just a strong enough candidate to be able to roll up their sleeves and get involved with GCP, because you're going to struggle to hire the right people then to help you control your roadmap. Tying into that, a question from Lindsay. Within the data and tech space, are you seeing trends towards employees needing to be able to do everything, in parentheses, BI, data architecture, data engineering, et cetera? I interviewed with quite a few companies last year, and that seemed to be a common thread regardless of company size. Yes, I think at least on the West Coast, we see a lot of hiring managers looking for one person to wear many hats. And I think we're always doing our best to advise them of what is realistic based on the marketplace. I don't know, Sam, Kyle, what you're seeing.
I saw similar stuff, and I think especially through the end of last year and early this year, when a lot of companies were going through some layoffs and going on some hiring freezes, they needed people to do a little bit extra, or like wear those extra hats. I think we've kind of come off that a little bit, but that diverse experience and background will always be a positive for any team hiring, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say a large percentage of my job is advising clients on what is actually possible from the talent in the market. So we certainly see that, and I can see from a candidate perspective as well. It can be really frustrating when what is being asked for is unrealistic. So we do as much as we can to try and bring those expectations back to reality. But there will always be a bit of that when it comes to the world of data and analytics recruitment, unfortunately.
Yeah. And from Mona Lisa, thinking future forward, what skills do you consider for upskilling yourself for the future market? What would we recommend?
Yeah, you want me to take that? I mean, that's hard to answer, as just a general, I guess, in the industry as a whole, because I think it also depends on, the specialty and the vertical that you work in. But I think the understanding of the key skills that we saw in our survey, that can kind of be a jumping off point. Python, SQL, Tableau, and then expand from there, like we discussed. Some experience in BI or Looker, or even knowing, if you don't have expertise in those things, what are the different functions and different avenues and ways that you can use those tools, I think is big. And then, with AWS, GCP, Azure, like just familiarizing yourself with those, different avenues that companies may be looking for, I think helps it as a candidate. Hiring managers, like McElla has talked about, understanding what experience, if it's not in a specific technology or tool, can translate and have a short learning curve, will open up a bigger candidate pool automatically, and will help. And then, if we wanted to get even deeper, anything that Sam had mentioned in the kind of machine learning, AI, kind of data science world, like that is just, again, it's the hot button topic right now in the market. And, if that's something you're interested in or doing right now, upskilling in any of those things will help you out for sure.
Yeah, and I guess just to add to that, it's very dependent on where you want your career path to go. But as long as you can pass a technical test and you're focused on your technical skills on top of that, I would advise thinking about, your resume, how that looks. Is it clear, concise? Is it well written? And then when thinking about how you interview or how you talk to stakeholders, that is a huge skill. And actually, as you get more senior, the candidates that we see getting these big jobs are people who interview really well, who can sell themselves clearly and concisely and talk about the impact that their technical work has had, not just talking about, I've got this, and from a tech stack perspective, it's people who can show the impact that they've had within a company, because our hiring managers really like that and look for that in a candidate.
It's such a good point. I mean, I think a lot of the times, just based on the nature of the work that we work within, people focus so much on the technical skills. And yes, that can get you very far. But at the end of the day, we're people working with people. And companies want to be able to communicate effectively, have productive and positive conversations with peers and colleagues. And so refining those softer skills is just as important if you really want to grow your career as the hard technical skills. But to wrap that up, I think looking at those core foundational skills within SQL, a cloud-based application, a data visualization tool, that's like really that foundation that needs to be bread and butter, and then you can build from there. And yeah, I think shout outs to everyone for asking questions. We're getting a lot from the audience that we're doing our best to get through. But we really appreciate all of them and the involvement from the market. One interesting one, maybe we'll just see what our thoughts are. How do you differentiate the requirement in learning Excel and Power BI? Which is more powerful? Another question from Mona Lisa. I mean, for me, I don't know. We don't see a lot of Power BI on the West Coast, maybe some larger corporations, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
We do see a bit of Power BI, and I kind of also loop that in with like Tableau and Looker. Like it's a visualization tool to make the dashboarding. That's what a lot of our clients are focusing on. I think like Sam just mentioned, it might be less the actual tool, but how are you using that dashboard or data set, whether it's in Excel, BI, Tableau, to answer the business question. The focus may be more on how are you explaining to laymen the findings and suggesting answers to the business questions. That is what the key trait that our clients are looking for, is that communication and stakeholder engagement. Differentiating between the two technologies, I think, is secondary.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, any closing statements that either of you want to share on any of the topics we covered today?
I don't think so, not for me. We've covered some good stuff there. Just encourage everyone to download the guide. Please feel free to connect with me if you've got any questions following this. I'll do my best to get to them. But yeah, excited to see what the rest of the year holds for the market.
Yeah, same. I don't have anything to add on top of the topics we talked, but our website, you can download the guide. You can even request special reports for specific skill sets, jobs, if you're hiring specific roles in specific regions. So check the website. If you have any questions on the guide, feel free to reach out to any of us, connect with us on LinkedIn, send us a message. We're happy to sit down and chat through anything that you have questions on.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sam. Thank you, Kyle. I think that was an awesome conversation. I'm so excited about this guide. I think it's the most comprehensive and innovative guide that we've come out with. So hats off to our marketing team for doing an incredible job with all of our supporting teams that helped doing all of the research and data collection. Thank you to our audience for tuning in to the launch of our 2023 salary guide. As Kyle mentioned, head to our interactive website to compare your salary or get me more detailed reporting on roles that you are trying to recruit for this upcoming year. And feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn. Again, my name's McElla. I've been the moderator for this session, and we really appreciate our audience and listeners. If you need any assistance or help in hiring, don't hesitate to reach out to us. All right. Thanks, everyone.